But the good news is that mindfulness practices can neutralize the thoughts, emotions, and the pictures that come up alongside reminders of tragic events like this. And like we said the last time we spoke, we need those who are protecting and serving us to be free and clear from turmoil or preoccupation. We want them to be brilliant. We want them to be able to think on their feet. And to be a good citizen, I need to be resourced from within. I need to be present with my surroundings so I can engage in behaviors that are beneficial for myself and my family and my friends and my community. Mindfulness is the medicine.
You're listening to Precinct 444, a podcast network from the National Law Enforcement Museum. Today we're bringing you an episode from Lifeline, offering a holistic wellness approach focused on supporting American law enforcement, promoting resilience, safety, and survivability.
Greetings. My name is Troy Anderson, Executive Director of Officer Safety and Wellness for the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund. It brings me great pleasure to introduce an innovative approach to wellness, which will be the first in the Lifeline podcast series. There are many pivotal events which have affected our nation and leave an indelible mark on the psyche of the American public. This could be the country being drawn into war by the attack on Pearl Harbor, the Great Depression, assassinations of political figures and community leaders, and domestic mass casualty events. These are the events which seem to be characterized by one underlying shared moment. We all remember where we were when we learned of them. One such event which seemed to galvanize the American spirit of patriotism were the unthinkable and tragic events on 9/11, 2001. Nearly 23 years later, everyone who has a memory of that day can tell you where they were as the day's events unfolded and will never forget their emotional reaction as they learned of the scale of these attacks and tried to come to grips with the loss that day. And in the years that have followed, due to 9/11 related illness. Speaking personally, I have mourned the loss of two of my colleagues from my department who subsequently lost their lives to these tragic diseases. These events have a long-lasting impact on all who have experienced them and who have been left behind to mourn an unmeasurable loss. Joining me here again today is Mary Petto. Mary is the Chief Marketing and Corporate Relations Officer at the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund. Mary is also a vibrational energy coach, master Reiki healer, rapid resolution therapy facilitator, certified mindfulness teacher, and author of the Amazon top seller, The Family Guide to the Law of Attraction. Welcome back, Mary.
Thank you. Thank you for having me again. I'm very excited to be here.
It's great to have you back. The last time we met, we talked about the various modalities in your toolkit that you use to help people manage and clear through any turmoil or stuckness that they may have. And together we did a mindfulness exercise to help release tension around the thoughts of other individuals or when you are engaging with another individual. Those results were very impactful.
Mm-hmm.
So as the anniversary approaches of 9/11, let's talk about it now. How might mindfulness exercises lend themselves to assist individuals coping and healing after a traumatic event like this?
Well, first, what I think we could talk about is what turmoil might look like for the officers affected by events like 9/11.
Let's talk about that. We know that in the wake of traumatic and catastrophic events, there's a collateral damage for first responders. Many who are experiencing post-traumatic stress injuries report being crippled by depression, anxiety, which for some can result in turning to unhealthy compensatory mechanisms such as addictions to substance abuse or other activities, and sadly, suicide. Knowing that first responders are members of the broader community, would it be fair to say that your experience has been that civilians go through a similar journey?
Yeah, absolutely. On September 11th, 2001, I was a young mom with a toddler and pregnant with my second child living in Marlborough, New Jersey, which is in a county called Monmouth County. And a very large percentage of Monmouth County residents were commuters to the city, particularly the financial district. And in New Jersey, we also have a lot of family connections to New York and out to the extended boroughs too. More than 700 families in Monmouth County were directly impacted by loss on September 11th, including several of the women in the Mommy and Me groups I was connected to. And like between those who lost family and friends and those of us who could clearly see the band of dark ash against the otherwise perfectly blue sky, even 50 miles away, there has been and there remains civilians, such as myself, who cannot escape the images that were broadcast on the news, which, we don't have to get into what those images are here, though I will tell you that in my community, there were kids whose teachers turned on the news that morning, insensitive to the fact that many of their students' parents were working in those buildings in downtown Manhattan. So here we are 23 years later. This can show up with just the mention of that day, and it can set off emotions that create a sense of still being where we were in that moment. Many people will not consider working or living in the city still because of the events of September 11th. Many people won't fly or take public transportation. So there's sadness, there's fear, there's phobias, and we all have it, all connected to 9/11 and other national and international tragedies. And all of this is due to the way mind is processing the data that came in that day. Some people process data efficiently and they move it to memory where it can be referenced with neutrality. But many civilians are still stuck in cycles of grief and fear, just like the many law enforcement heroes who did their very best that day directly on the scene and are still, affected in the ways that you mentioned. But the good news is that mindfulness practices can neutralize the thoughts, emotions, and the pictures that come up alongside reminders of tragic events like this. And like we said the last time we spoke, we need those who are protecting and serving us to be free and clear from turmoil or preoccupation. We want them to be brilliant. We want them to be able to think on their feet. And to be a good citizen, I need to be resourced from within. I need to be present with my surroundings so I can engage in behaviors that are beneficial for myself and my family and my friends and my community. Mindfulness is the medicine. I'll just jump right into this here. Like one particular practice I love for this, and you've probably heard of this, Troy, given your background in these kinds of modalities, is MBSR, which stands for mindfulness-based stress reduction exercises.
Right.
So you want to try one?
I think this would be a great time to do it. Sure. What are we going to do?
All right. So this one is great to bring the mind back to what's real and actually happening now. So it's tremendous assistance to use as a tool in the moment for anyone who, without warning, is thrown backward to September 11, 2001. But it's also a great daily practice for first responders, law enforcement officers, anybody suffering chronically with depression or grief as it relates back to the events of September 11th. So before we begin, just some housekeeping. As I take you through this, I will be pausing intermittently, but that's okay. I'm still here. Try to remain open and curious. And if you find your attention slipping to other things, which often happens, just breathe and bring it back to a focus on your body. And it's also like important to note that by returning your attention back when it wanders, you're actually building neural pathways in your brain. You're basically exercising your ability to come back to the present moment without judgment. So let's invite, well, Troy, I'm inviting you to do this with me now. Let's invite our producers to do this. Anybody who is driving a vehicle should save this podcast and come back to this later. But I do invite our listeners to participate in this. Definitely save it and use this as a tool to manage stress. And when your mind starts to go back and in time, and bring back all that stuck emotion and turmoil. So you ready?
Absolutely.
All right. All right. So everybody, just get nice and comfortable. If you're sitting in a chair, try to sit up straight, but ultimately comfort is key. Comfort is really what is most important. You can be lying down. That's fine too.
Not if you're driving.
But not if you're driving. If you're a passenger, that works. All right. So let's go. All right. Just go ahead and let your eyes rest. Close your eyes. And let's take a deep breath in through the nose. And exhale out through the mouth. And let's take one more deep breath in, nice and deep. And exhale out. Now bring your awareness to your sense of hearing. So all your awareness should go to your ears and bring up all the details of what you can hear right now. Of course, one of those things is my voice. But what else are you aware of in your surroundings that you can hear? And now bring your awareness to your sense of smell. So all attention on your nose, and perhaps it's a cup of coffee next to you, could be your laundry detergent, anything at all. Just bring all your attention there. And then, while your eyes are closed, bring your attention to your sense of sight. So even though your eyes are closed, notice what you can see behind your eyelids. Many people see shadows, sometimes colors. Just rest your awareness there. Good. Let's take another deep breath in. Exhale out. Now bring your attention into your body, your whole body. Notice the feeling of the weight of your body on the chair or on the floor, wherever you are. Just sink right in. And as you breathe, notice how your chest expands to allow the air to enter your lungs. Belly expands. Just bring your awareness to the movement of your body with your breath. Think about what sensations you're aware of right now. Comfort, discomfort, pain, anything at all. Do a scan of those sensations. And as you continue to breathe in a nice, relaxed fashion, bring your awareness to the stillness. Notice the sense of relaxing more deeply. Now bring your attention to the top of your head, noticing any sensations in your scalp. And down to the back of your head. To the sides of your head. And as we bring your awareness to different areas of the body, be sure to release your awareness from where we're left. Notice your jaw. Notice if you're holding any tension in your jaw, and just let your face be soft. Relax the muscles around your mouth and your eyes. Breathing in, breathing out. Notice your neck and your throat. Let them be soft. Notice your shoulders and arms. Feel any sensations as you allow your tension to move from your shoulders down to your upper arms, elbow, to your forearms, hands, fingers. Notice any tightness or temperature sensations in your hands. Bring your awareness to the fabric of your clothing against your skin. Continuing to breathe in and breathe out. Bring your attention back to your chest and feel the movement in your chest as you breathe. Bring your attention to your stomach, noticing if your stomach is tense or tight. And just let it soften. Notice your upper back, your lower back. And let your awareness now travel down your legs. Notice if you're holding any tension there and letting that release. Your thighs, your knees, calf, shin, ankles, and finally bringing your attention to your feet. Notice any sensations in your feet. Notice their connection to the ground or the floor. Notice any energy inside or around your feet. Continue breathing in and out. And let's bring your attention to the top of your head again and scan all the way down to your toes, nice and slow. And stay with the sense of your whole body for just a few more breaths. And as we close, continue remaining aware of your body as best as you can. And let's do one really deep breath in and a long breath out. And when you feel ready, you can start wiggling your fingers, twisting your ankles around, and opening your eyelids. So talk to me. How was that?
Listen, I told you before we started this recording that today just happened to be an overly stressful day. So I don't think I realized I needed that as much as I did. What I would compare it to most, I think, is my time that I sort of the feeling that comes from when I meditate with transcendental meditation. the difference is transcendental meditation is so quiet. I've never really been through a guided session. And it's very interesting how following those directions and actually being in sort of linked with you, as you're saying, go to this part, go to that part, realize this, feel that. It's, I don't know, the instructional portion of that is so different than transcendental meditation, but it gets you there so much quicker.
Mhm.
TM is one of those things that it's kind of, sometimes it takes a while to get into that zone. Sometimes you may never get to that point in your 20-minute session, but this was, I mean, I don't know how, I wasn't timing that, but that, I mean, I feel very, very relaxed, very cleansed, sort of just, that was really, that was impressive. I'm glad I did that. Did Chris join us? Was Chris on board?
Oh, I was for sure on board.
Oh, I thought maybe Chris fell asleep.
No, I'm close.
Well, and I'm glad, that really is the impact that we're looking for. And, there's so many, I mean, there's countless ways to think about meditation. But I think the goal of mindfulness, so specifically to restoring energy to the body where it's being depleted because sympathetic nervous system is trapped during events like this, and then for years and years to come. And so guided meditations, guided mindfulness exercises, and then even, if an officer is suffering from a traumatic event, PTSD related issues having to do with 9/11 or any other tragic events, if they were practicing this every day, let's say listening to my voice, guiding them through this or other types of exercises, there's hundreds of mindfulness exercises that fall into this focused attention category. They would probably learn to do it themselves, having remembered the guidance. And so again, there's this two categories where a person could whip this out of their toolbox, listen to a guided meditation. If they suddenly found themselves, that's the other thing that the mind does too, is mind just looks for similar. So if somebody says World Trade Center, or somebody says, for some people, it's just financial district. Anything, if you have not cleared that turmoil, can set you back. But we want to be able to thrive. We want to be able to take public transportation. We want to be able to appreciate New York City for everything it has to offer. And we, of course, most importantly, want our officers free and clear and resourced.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think you brought up a key point right there. And those are those triggers, right? And I think I've kind of heard, having worked with law enforcement officers who have been exposed to those stressful events, I hear how they not only remain stuck sometimes, but I think the key part is what you said about those triggers is that it's like picking a scab, sort of, right? So even if they have done the work, even if they've worked with a therapist or worked with a healer or have spent the time exploring different modalities and really investing in themselves, is good as that is, as great as that recipe is for you, it's completely normal to be re-triggered or to have that scab picked or something. And I know there were folks that I served with overseas when we were in the Middle East, and sometimes it could just be the smell of diesel that reminded them of some of the military vehicles we would be transported in, or just the smell of that diesel. And it might be on the streets of the city, but they smell that diesel and somehow they're instantly transported back, or they hear a sound or whatever it might be. So I think it's important for people to recognize that even though you've put the work in, if you've put the work in, if you haven't, it's a great day to start. But if you put the work in and something causes you, and it may be something completely unrelated, to feel like you're back in that moment, this is a really great way, especially if you remember the self-guided component, right? Tell me if I'm crazy, Mary, but if they can remember what you just walked them through and they practice that enough listening to your words, they could do that themselves, right? So here I am, I'm in a bad spot, I'm triggered, and now this is something I can do for myself.
Right. And what you're doing is you're telling unconscious mind that what you're remembering and feeling is just familiar. It's similar, but it's not real.
Right.
You can't prevent it from happening. And that's really what unconscious mind is trying to do if it's stuck. It thinks it's happening now, and it will
Mm,
attach itself to anything similar in its directive to keep you alive, right?
yeah.
So it will impress upon thoughts and try to make something that isn't real because it thinks it's real. It thinks it's happening right now. But if I asked you, like, where's the Civil War? I'm looking for the Civil War.
Sure.
The answer is sorry, it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. What exists is where I am right now,
Right.
present here with my family or doing my job or eating my lunch. And so that is exactly what this does. And it's a conscious way to integrate your conscious thoughts and awareness of the present and tell unconscious mind everything is okay.
I know that we're gonna talk a little bit more about kind of where you are and what where you are sort of in the world in the United States and the services that you offer, and I think that's amazing. But for people that may be listening around the country or potentially around the world, where are they going to look for these resources to find somebody like you who has been trained in this sort of modality and now can help guide these folks out of maybe what might be a very dark place?
Yeah. Well, I'm here for it. So anybody could reach me here at the Memorial Fund, of course. Um, and it is my mission in life to help people feel better, to
Sure.
help people thrive, to move from surviving to thriving. And that is the difference. Just making their way through every day, trying to survive, to thriving, to being able to see a future.
Hmm.
What happens when we're stuck in turmoil because our unconscious mind is just trying to protect us all the time. We can't see a future.
Right.
We can't quantum leap into that next version of ourselves, or how we keep moving through life is to look forward to more things and, seeking more and more
Right.
experiences.
And
And
to connect, and not to interrupt you, Mira, but to
Mhm.
connect the information that you have with an at-risk group of first responders that we know predictably are going to be exposed to bad things. And clearly, this is a type of modality that not only would be beneficial to any first responder, and I think honestly, even pre-incident, right? I mean, even if I'm a new officer, I'm in the academy, maybe I haven't been exposed to something, but if I start practicing this now, is this
Mhm.
not a tool that I can carry throughout my career? Right? Or if you have been exposed, and maybe you've been exposed a multitude of times, and your attic is just full of compartmentalized boxes of traumatic experiences, it's never too late to reach out and say, well, I was trying to self heal. And we know doctors will try that, but that doesn't always work well. You have to recognize that there are things beyond. We have our own limitations. And sometimes you have to have the courage to reach out and say, I need some help, right? And that's that conversation, that courageous conversation happens with you first. It's going to be your family is going to be telling you, your friends are maybe telling you there's something off, you need a little help. But until you have that conversation with yourself, that is the first step. And recognizing that nobody's going to get through a 20 or 30-year career in law enforcement or the military or firefighter or EM. You're not going to get through a career without being exposed to traumatic events. It's not going to happen. So knowing that, I think we all have to be honest with ourselves and realize that that conversation needs to happen today. It needs to happen now. Because I bet if you think back to the conversations you've had with your friends and family and coworkers, they've probably told you many times. You just didn't hear it. And it might be time now to just say, yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready to take the next step because it's this easy. I mean, we just saw it. We were all participants in exactly what you're doing. And it was completely painless. I know a lot of folks in law enforcement, they think that every different modality is going to require you to fall on the ground in the fetal position and cry or rock back and forth. It's not like, I mean, we just did it And I felt that inherent benefit of relaxation, really just through the few minutes that we did that. It's exactly what I needed.
Yeah. And if I may be so bold, this is gonna be bold.
All right,
You heard
be bold.
you heard it here on this podcast. You just mentioned people think that they have to be forced to fall into the fetal position in fear. They feel, and in some cases it works. You go to therapy, and there's a lot of philosophy in psychotherapy that says you've got to feel it to heal it. Let's relive it again. Let's process it. May I add, blah blah blah. But in the case of something like rapid resolution coaching that I do, you know, you sit back and relax. Let me talk to you. Let me get in there, mind for that stuckness, mind for where your inner mind is holding on to pictures, images, and sensations in an effort to try to protect you. But let me pluck it out.
Sure.
Let's unkink that hose. And it does get to be, just like you said, Troy, it does get to be that simple, where you can do an exercise like mindfulness, where you could see somebody trained in taking care of you. Listen, if you came to get a haircut, I wouldn't hand you the scissors and then try to give you some instructions. Then also say, by the way, if you can't do it, you're not taking responsibility for your haircut. Right. So
Sure.
that it doesn't. So let me use the scissors. Let me get you that haircut. Or somebody else, the thing is, it doesn't have to be painful, but you're right. It does start with that conversation with self to decide, are you ready to see a future? Are you ready?
Which is
to
really
see
the hardest part. That really is. And it has pained me over the years to see so many walking wounded officers out there, because we all know that so much of this is avoidable. And even as you look back and we talk about events that have left that indelible impression on our nation, I think about the Vietnam War, and I think about what so many of those soldiers and all the other branches, what they went through. Right? It was not a welcoming time to come home. And I know that part of that set the tone for many of them, really burying their experiences as opposed to trying to process them. And when I started doing some work years ago with transcendental meditation and EMDR, and we were encountering some Vietnam veterans who were coming in and being not trained, but being treated for the first time. And we're talking about folks who have been wrestling with these experiences and memories for 50 years, who were able to find relief. And to think about losing, you're an 18-year-old kid that goes over, and now you're 68 years old. The majority of your life, you have just been wrestling with a demon in your head, and you have been trying to force that down, right? And that, I think, also translates into the law enforcement culture. Twice as many retirees commit suicide than active officers. They are carrying demons forward, and it is unnecessary. And this, I think this dialogue that we have here, and certainly learning more about what you're doing and demystifying it by going through the experience itself, I think this gives permission to people. Like, if whatever you've been doing hasn't been working, maybe this is something you should consider. This is something you should open your mind to. It's a courageous conversation, but I've had it with myself. I had it with myself a long time ago, and you have to have it. And I think that I've seen the officers who have had that courage, and they are living fruitful lives. Some still on the job, many of them retired. Folks that I worked with for years, they're retired. They are enjoying their retirement. They're enjoying their families. They know what love feels like. And part of that love is love for you. You have to love you. If you don't love you, I'm going to guess there's not a lot of people around you that are gonna, right? They're not going to be able to fully love you. So anyway, I didn't mean to get off track on that, Mary, but I see the application here. I see how, as we're talking about 9/11 with the anniversary approaching, and we're thinking about and you have very insightful points. When I think, for me, when I think about 9/11, I think about coworkers. I think about so many officers who died, so many firefighters who died, and just first responders in general. But to think about the community component, which, I don't know that a lot of people, I don't know that our minds really go to that place, but you had not only a front row seat, but you were inclusive in that group. You experienced it with them. And knowing that this type of help is there for them as well as any other vocation. But it's really, it's great that we're having this conversation, because I don't know how people would find out about this if we didn't have these conversations, right? I mean, I know that there are a lot of people that are already very aware of this, but I know in law enforcement circles, I will be up in front of an audience talking about some of the different modalities that we've used over the years to when I was with the Connecticut State Police, different things that we would use. And, sometimes when you look into the audience, when we'd be talking about some of these modalities, it would look a little bit like Easter Island, right? Just sort of blank face, because these officers had never been exposed to that. They had never had these conversations, certainly didn't have anybody to bring them to make that connection. So it's really great that not only are we fortunate to have you as a member of our staff and management team member, but also this very unique gift and this talent that you're able to share with the officers through this. I just think that's amazing. As we approach the conclusion of this program, I'd like to thank our guest, Mary Petto, once again for joining us on this Lifeline podcast and sharing her unique perspective with our audience. In addition to being able to pick up Mary's best-selling book, The Family Guide to the Law of Attraction, on Amazon, please visit nleomf.org under the Officer Safety and Wellness section for hundreds of no-cost resources. Explore specifically in the Destination Zero section to learn more about cutting-edge safety and wellness programs nationally for law enforcement. Mary, before we go, is there anything else you want to say? Because I can tell you, it's just been a real pleasure talking to you today.
Oh, thanks. Well, maybe this is a good time for me to express a dream I have, which is that our law enforcement organizations at the local, state, and national level put some serious resources behind programs that are preventative and include training on keeping the mind in the best shape possible and where to go, or even provide those services for them, just right alongside all the other training that law enforcement does before they become fully our heroes in blue. So hopefully we can get that going.
Mary, I usually like to plan things out ahead of time before I roll them out on a podcast, but I just had an idea as you were saying that. And I think about the events that happened during National Police Week and just how stressful and emotional that can be for so many surviving families and coworkers and the honor guard. And there's just so much going on. Wouldn't it be nice if maybe at a couple points, perhaps during the week, you might be able to maybe in the National Law Enforcement Museum right there at the campus across from the memorial, maybe you can have a group area where we can kind of bring people together and you can offer this sort of guided process for them to experience, especially during that very, very difficult week.
It would be an honor. I would love to do that.
All right, we'll get working on that somehow behind the scenes. For Lifeline, this is Troy Anderson, wishing you a safe and healthy day, and thank you again for listening. Bye-bye.
Please subscribe to Precinct 444 on your favorite podcasting platform to stay connected and to receive our latest content as soon as it drops. We would love to hear from you. Send in your questions, comments, and feedback to precinct444@nleomf.org. You can help us make our content even better. The National Law Enforcement Museum is located at 444 East Street Northwest in Washington, D.C., and is dedicated to telling the story of American law enforcement. We expand and enrich the relationship between law enforcement and the community through educational journeys, immersive exhibitions, and insightful programs. Find us online at lawenforcementmuseum.org and stay tuned for more podcast content from Precinct 444. Until next time, stay safe. We'll see you at the precinct.